Hello everyone, it's Mike from Chess Lifestyle, and how are you all doing today? Basically today's going to be a very special stream, because we're actually going to be taking a break from the calculation for both this video and the next video, this stream and the next stream. And the reason why is because I recently read... Okay, sorry, I should be multitasking here. Let me adjust this slightly. We gained a couple of subscribers since our last stream, so I had to update it. But yeah, basically, I've recently been reading this book, Under the Surface. Now, I made a review of this book a few years ago, actually, three or 4 years ago, when I had read like the first chapter or like the first few chapters of this book, and I really, really liked it, and I just wanted to share it at the time because it was a very new book. But as with a lot of chess books, it took me a long while to actually get down to like finishing it, and I've actually read almost all the chapters now, and there's so much gold in this book. Like, really has made me think of I don't know, certain aspects of chess very differently. And I was contemplating whether to like summarize some of like the best aspects of this book on stream, but I kind of thought that I'm going to reserve it for my students because it makes some really good, like, instructive material. And I mean, yeah, Jan Marcos actually advocates for, like, coaches to use this content for teaching. But I think if I go through everything on stream, then it kind of defeats the purpose of the guy writing a book on it, and it feels kind of rude, I don't know. But he's given, you know, coaches permission to use this in teaching, so I feel like that's fair game. But yeah, I wanted to reference something in this book, which is why we're actually going to be doing something different these next couple streams. And that is, at the end of the book, there is a very, very instructive 4 or 5 pages on how to train chess properly. And there is a little sub-chapter within this chapter called Passion and Order. And I just wanted to read that out for you guys. So, in Passion and Order, it says, "It is important for you to enjoy your training because otherwise it will be very difficult for you to persevere at it. For instance, for somebody who is a tactician with his whole body and soul, it is nonsense to spend long hours and days training on dry technical positions which bore him to death. That is the best way to destroy one's passion for the game. On the other hand, it is sometimes important to devote yourself to issues and activity which do not pull at your heartstrings so much, because otherwise you will never improve at them. I would reckon that 75% of training should consist of activities that a chess player really enjoys, and the remaining 25% should be activities that he doesn't enjoy, but which are useful for his performance. Players thinking about a professional career should adjust this ratio to 50-50. Now, I won't read the other paragraphs of this Passion Order, even though they're very interesting, because I really want to fixate on this. And basically, if you think about my recent streams, right? I've been streaming, I don't know, 36 days now. I've basically been prioritizing the aspect of my chess which is my worst, which is like my tactics and calculation. But in terms of passion, this is actually the area of chess which I like the least. I mean, you've probably seen from my streams, like, I've been moaning and groaning as I've been going through these calculation exercises. And I'm not exactly having the most of fun. Like, I am having fun because it's with you guys on stream. But definitely it's not like, you know, why I'm loving chess, right? And in a way, like, recently I haven't been training chess aside from the daily streams. And somehow I've actually been doing okay with it. So probably my ratio is like 100-0 in terms of things I enjoy, or maybe 90-10. But basically this week, I had some extra time, and I was basically studying this book with a friend. Basically, you know, from start to finish, and so many interesting things covered, honestly. But it got me thinking that, yeah, like, I kind of want to add some things that I'm actually more passionate about into these videos. And I want to share with you basically this this idea I had today with a friend of mine, a chess friend of mine. And it is about this opening, the Antoshin Philidor. Now, my friend was like considering maybe playing it, and actually a long time ago, like 3 years ago as well, I also considered playing the Philidor. And I was looking into it today, and I thought like, oh, it's so interesting. Like, I really want to share these lines with you. And I thought we could actually make it a two-part video. And what we're actually going to do is I'm going to stream for, I don't know, maybe like 39 minutes, right? 39 minutes now. And I should probably start my timer. I don't know how many minutes I've been, talking already. But basically, how long have I been talking? 7 minutes, so we need another 32 minutes, which means... Oh, I started at 9 on the dot? Well, that makes it easy. But yeah, basically... Oh wait, let me let me not do one thing at a time. 1 second, sorry. Yeah, basically, I have a flight to catch tomorrow. I'm visiting a friend in the Netherlands, and I haven't packed. I haven't got anything ready for it yet, and it's in the morning. It's I need to leave early in the morning. So what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna stream. I'm going to then pack, and then I'm going to stream again around 11:30. And by the time it finishes the upload, it will be into the next day, and that will count as tomorrow's stream because I'm gonna be traveling most of tomorrow, and I won't really have much time to do much chess. Except for on the travels, I'm going to be writing a lot of my Chessable course. Anyway, the point is I'm gonna have 2 streams in one. That is the point. So, what is the Antosh Philidor? Let me explain it to you. And today, I'm going to split the streams into 2, and one is going to be about more critical theory, and one is going to be about like more of the ideas behind why I'm playing this line. And yeah, maybe it will be useful for some of you guys. So basically, when I play with the black side against e4, my worst nightmare is to get positions like this, where basically it becomes like semi-open. This is a French line in the French defense. And where white establishes a bishop on d3. And I used to play the French when I was younger, and I used to have to play against these positions. And I kind of just accepted that this was my fate as a chess player, that, as black, you get some crappy positions, and you have to deal with all kinds of pressure on your king side. I just really didn't like this. I really hated this, and that is why you've probably seen like in my streams, I'm either playing like a modern, where basically I'm playing particularly with the c6 move, and getting these very close structures where there's not going to be any attack with like some bishop on d3. This is not going to be an issue, and in many lines I'll even be able to trade it off. Like for instance, maybe something like this. Maybe something like this, and we trade bishops and get something like this. So this is one way, and then the other way as well, like I was playing with the Caro-Kann, right? And often putting the bishop on f5 very early to neutralize this bishop on d3. And again, my kingside is a lot safer as a result. So this was kind of like my philosophy with openings. And a while back, I discovered there's this very interesting line with the Philidor. And the Philidor can come in 2 ways. Either you can play with e5, and you're basically playing this d6 move here. Now, at first glance, it looks extremely passive. Why would anyone ever do this, right? Like, you're limiting your bishop, you're not developing a piece. But it doesn't... Firstly, I want to note that all of the critical lines and all of the lines in this Philidor, you're kind of getting positions where you're getting a position like this. And it's actually very rare, because you've got this pawn on d6. This bishop is quite rarely going to this bishop d3 square, since, it's kind of blocked by its own pawn. So, in terms of this aspect of having this open bishop on d3, the Philidor kind of, is able to sort this. Now, I realize this is a very niche reason why to play the Philidor, and there are many other systems you can play, but I just wanted to clarify that, it's also a similar kind of vibe as the Caro-Kann and Gurgenidze Modern, at least for me, in the sense that I'm not allowing like this easy kind of pressure on my king side. So the move order that I want to suggest, and I should also say like who this is suggesting to. So I don't think this is a repertoire that is suitable for anyone below maybe like 1800 online. Because I think there's too much memory involved. It's too critical, certain lines. And also some of the lines you need to really be able to outplay your opponents. And there are definitely easier system openings to play where you can avoid this. So for instance, the Karokan or the Gurgnitz Modern, these are much, much easier to play, and I'd much more recommend. But still, I wanted to like delve into these lines because I haven't really had the time, and I like this is what I'm saying, right? With this Jan Markos paragraphs about passion, right? Like he says, I would reckon that 75% of training should consist of activities that a chess player really enjoys, and the remaining 25% should be activities that he doesn't enjoy, but which are useful for his performance. Players thinking about a professional career should adjust their ratio to 50-50. Now, for me, yeah, this is basically going to be the 75%, like the aspect that I enjoy, like delving into these lines and understanding it deeper. So basically, what I like about this Philidor is actually starting with the move d6. Because when we play e5, we'd probably need to know some stuff against the Vienna, know some stuff against King's Gambit. And of course, these lines, you might welcome playing these lines, but also the white player who's choosing to play the King's Gambit or the Vienna, they like to play it, right? And that means you're going to be basically playing into their hand somewhat. So I don't really like that. And I like playing with d6 because it also keeps it a mystery of what I'm going to play. Am I going to play a modern? Am I going to play in the style of a Black Lion Philidor? Or am I going to play an Antoshin Philidor, which is kind of this like out of favor old line of the Philidor? So typically white will take the center. And the move I'm going to recommend here is not to play knight f6, but just to go ahead with e5. And I'm going to split these videos into two. I'm going to make two videos, as I said. One is going to be on the endgame lines, which involve taking and getting this very, very early endgame. And my goal is that, ignore the plus 0.8 actually, because after bishop c4, you can see that the eval goes right down. So, I don't know, you can consider this as like plus 0.4, plus 0.3, plus 0.8. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, ultimately, I want to try and study this endgame, see if we can understand where the pieces belong, and see if we can get a practical advantage over our opponents and outplay them, right? So this is going to be the first aspect, which I'm going to try and cover today. And the second aspect is going to be the more critical lines, where basically white plays the best move here, which is knight f3. And then Black Lion is basically playing with knight d7 and knight f6, which is much, much more popular nowadays. But the Philidor, the Antoshin Philidor, is to take knight takes, knight f6, knight c3. And this is the starting position of the Antoshin Philidor. I should actually clarify this, actually. It's actually bishop e7 here is the Antoshin. Like, in this position, g6 is also playable. But this is kind of like really not favored nowadays, because basically white just sets up a very simple Yugoslav style attack with g4, h4, and it's just bad. It's just bad. That's a good idea. Are you going to make this study public? Ooh, that's a good question. That's a good question. Shay, you know what? I'm going to say no. But if you would like to join this study, either message your username, Lichess username in chat, or message your Lichess username in the comments below when this becomes uploaded offline, and I will add you to the study. So you can add this. This is not my Chessable course, Lucas. I'm not showcasing all of my Chessable course lines. Otherwise, that would be a very, 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 very silly decision from my part. I have done sillier things, but no, this is just something for fun, which I think is kind of cool. So this is the Antoshin Philidor with bishop e7. And yeah, we're going to look into it today. So for anyone joining the stream now, I'm going to be streaming again at 11:30 to count that as my next day training, because I'm going to be traveling tomorrow and I won't have any time to be making any streams. So basically, today and tomorrow is going to be now and at 11:30. So basically, this endgame line, I found that we can play it against 1e4. As I just showed you just now, and then probably we need to consider some different options here, and we're going to delve into this very soon. And for the record, this stuff also works against d4. Like, if you play d6, firstly, if they play e4, well, then this is just a transposition, right? And if they play c4, well, then we can play e5, and again, we get an endgame line. That is also very interesting, and actually, this one is even slightly better for black. So, this is definitely playable, and I think would be interesting as well. So I think this d6 e5 is like a really interesting idea. Kind of can use it as a repertoire against e4 and d4 for sure. So, we got a username. Okay, I will. You know what? I'll make this let people browse freely. So that means we're not going to be in sync. Yeah, and the rest. Okay, I'm gonna say only me, or share and export. Now I'll keep it. Yeah, if people want to make their own study, then they need to put in the work and input all the lines so that they get extra practice. Like no lazy training over here. So I will add you now. Bane, Bane's on toast. I love it. Okay, so you should be able to see the lines. Bane's on toast. I was making a chessable course last year, but then gave up because I don't want to write too many words. Yeah, honestly, I don't even know how many words I've written. I've literally written. I reckon I've written like 20k at least. It's been insane. But I'm so excited for when it comes out. I genuinely think it's like one of the best things I've ever done or achieved or written or produced, whatever you want to call it. Like, yeah, it's I'm really hyped. But yeah, basically I want to discuss this endgame, and I actually played a game. So I wanted to analyze this game first, and then we'll actually discuss some of the nuances of the Antoshin. And the interesting thing is I actually got an advantage fairly easily, but then I kind of didn't really know what to do, and then I kind of got outplayed. So I kind of got the dream scenario and then got outplayed, so I also want to understand how I got outplayed. So I think this will be useful, this analysis, for everyone as well as myself. So here we can see that my opponents played d4, but ultimately this was my first time playing d6 in many years, and I was just ready to play it against anything. And we actually get this endgame line, right? Now, okay, of course, this isn't going to be completely theoretical because white hasn't played either of these moves, which we were going to cover. But, okay, we get a position. And to me, okay, firstly, you know, we know that in general, the king wants to get castled, right? But, as we know, if the queens are off, the attacking prospects are less, and therefore a king can actually stay in the center and not be too bad, so long as it has a home. And against this bishop on g2, it makes perfect sense to me to play the move c6. Now, in fact, c6 is apparently plus 0.9. So, this is actually... okay, Engine is also not so sure as well. Maybe it is playable. Finding lines and new ideas are easy, but writing is the hard part. Right. Yeah, I mean, like... I kind of felt like sometimes I wished, like, you know, all of the ideas I have can just like regurgitate onto the page, but okay. It's also not too bad. Like sometimes you just get into the flow of writing and it feels quite nice to write. I don't know, maybe it's just person to person, but I actually didn't mind the whole writing aspect. But anyway, I played c6 because I want to put my king on c7. And I just put it there immediately because I just wanted to make sure that my king is completely safe. My opponent played this f4 move. And I decided to take because I realized I could block with the bishop, like so. And sure, my king gets very exposed, but again, we have traded off a queen, and we've traded off a dark squared bishop, and my king is going to live on a dark square. So this is probably alright. Now, he castled queenside, I went back to c7. Already, Engine likes my position more, right? Which is insane, right? He's got 3 pieces developed and got his king castled, and yet somehow, according to Engine, I'm better. And the reason why, despite having 0 development, is because I have a structural advantage. And what the Engine understands is that long term, I'm going to be fine. There's not going to be any kind of initiative that messes me up if I play accurately, and I will just be better. So this is kind of what we're going for. Here, I really liked the fact that I could play both f6 and c6, and I've seen in some model games, which I'll come to later, this f6, c6 idea, like just to limit the knights, is just absolutely fantastic. So we're going to cover that in a bit. But anyway, just to see how this game went, I played bishop g4 because why not? Like, in a way, I don't really want white unraveling with e5. So I wanted to pin this knight, and then I could play rook knight d7 and maybe add more pressure. So my opponent got out of a pin, I decided to use this chance to take. And as you can see, the eval is slowly working in my favor. So clearly, like whatever advantage white had at the start, if they had any, it's clearly not that easy practically to keep hold of. And here, I just planted my knight on e5 with a tempo. I developed my other knight. And interesting, this is maybe my first inaccuracy to see that knight h6 is actually preferred. But what is the point? Knight hf7. And actually, this looks very nice. You support the knight in the center, and actually, you're controlling all of these squares. Okay, let's make it green to make it look prettier. Basically, the knights are gonna be doing great. And then I guess from there, I wonder what the play would be to actually try and convert this. Let's say they try and double. I don't even know. I don't even know what natural moves to suggest. But let's say they somehow just, I don't know, play b3, king b2, and then just like don't do anything, right? So trading pieces feels like it's a good idea when we're playing against the isolated pawn. Although, actually, what is the rule? Does anyone know the rule? Are we supposed to trade major pieces against an isolated pawn or not? Maybe we're not supposed to. Maybe what we're supposed to do is actually play like rook e8, rook e7, rook e8 and try and gang up on this pawn. Maybe that's like the actual play. g3 in a rat defense is weird. Right, it's actually the main line though. It's one of the main lines. This g3 in the Santoshin, which we'll come to. But I think this is interesting. And oh, how interesting. Look at Engine saying rook h e8. So maybe this is actually better, right? To acknowledge that, okay, fine, they've got doubled rooks on an open file, but they ultimately do nothing with the setup. And we're just going to play rook e7, rook e8, and eventually remove this knight with some idea of trying to win the pawn. If you're not attacking it, then it's better to trade. If you have the IQP, then yes. Wait, so if you have the IQP, you want to trade major pieces, and if you don't have it, then you want to use them to attack. Okay, cool. Thanks, Daniel. And trade pieces if IQP. So I think, yeah, that's the general rule, right? Generally, you want to trade pieces, but in terms of major pieces, I knew there was some specific rule. And Daniel, I know a lot of very strong Daniels at chess, so I'm going to believe that you know what you're talking about. Okay, Shaq the Tractongan says, hi, I think you're supposed to trade minor pieces and target the pawn with the major pieces. Right, exactly. That's what I've heard. I couldn't remember, but that's what I've heard, yeah. So this looks exactly right. And then, you know, if they try and defend with the bishop, well, then we can always like try and trade this bishop off and eventually be just left with pressuring this pawn. And that's actually the thing. Imagine that these pieces have gone, and these pieces have gone, and we've doubled like rooks, and they've doubled rooks. At some point, we'll be able to push f5. And this is actually something mentioned in the Under the Surface book as well. This is called a lever, where basically there's a pawn that is kind of stuck, and you're basically like hooking onto it in order to take some advantage. So this was actually this is actually really good to remind ourselves of. So I think this would have been better. I put the knight on e7. I just traded the pieces, thinking, okay, he's got isolated pawn. But actually, it wasn't so easy to play this. Like, of course, I have no weaknesses, but I just didn't really know. I guess, yeah, I worked out that my knight might be better on this square, but now it doesn't make as much sense, right? I'm not really needing to control these squares. And I didn't really know what to do. I didn't even know whether to put my pawns on light squares or dark squares, because typically you'd want to put your pawns on dark squares against this bishop so that they can't take them, but then the bishop is also more active, right? Like when the pawns are on light squares, it kind of shields this bishop. So at this kind of like late middle game, early endgame stage, I wasn't so sure. And I did feel though that, you know, by pushing these pawns, I am weakening squares. Like if white can somehow find a way to re-maneuver like this knight somehow, I don't even know how, something like this, and then get the knight here, this could be problem, right? So, or maybe even knight f4, right, was annoying. So that's why I played g5 here. But things definitely started to go wrong. I really messed this up. And what ended up happening was I played for this b5. We got this position. And already it started to go wrong. And I guess the problem is that this b5 is just fixed on a light square. And this is just a big problem. So I think my plan... I think a6 must be a mistake. Yeah, a6 is a mistake. That makes a lot of sense. So... Yeah, I think there has to be a different way here. Interesting to see Engine just say b6 and just say, okay, we keep all of our pawns on dark squares. We play against this isolated pawn. There's no way that we're ever losing this, and maybe I guess we can try and actually just tickle these pieces. That's probably the best way to go. Um, I reckon that's right. So let's see what everyone else is saying. I'm pretty sure you're supposed to trade pieces when playing against IQP. Yeah, so in general, I think Shaq Petrangtungen, I like his statement the most. I think you're supposed to trade minor pieces and target a pawn with the major pieces. I think that's legit. Like, obviously, if you can trade everything and go down to bare kings, then the pawn endgame is going to be really good in your favor. But to trade that final minor piece or two minor pieces like we have here, it's not so easy, right? Two knight to three should be best. Oh, you mean just like right at the start against d4, right? Yeah. So this is actually something I need to work out, right? Because here you can't actually play this e5, and maybe we need something different here. Yeah, could be that this is like some remedy to this e5, at least against d4. But for sure against e4 we can definitely play this Antoshin Philidor. But these endgames are all kind of similar, so I wanted to just understand this a bit better, and I think, yeah, so far what we've understood is really, really great. And understanding that my pawn should be on b6. And the funny thing here is that actually, yeah, my opponent completely outplayed me despite getting this advantage. And I was quite happy to trade, and then I realized, wait, actually, he's threatening to play e5, and king d6, he had bishop e2. And suddenly this guy is dropping. I panic with king c6, and yeah, now I'm really in trouble. And basically, I kind of swindled him a bit, because here, yeah, this position, I was banking on my knight when I played knight d6. I think around here, I noticed that I have this fork. So I was hoping maybe I can distract the bishop, and maybe he just misses that I have this fork, and he did. Right, he allowed this fork, I won this pawn. And then in this position, it's just, this is just of course a draw, because I can always sack the knight for the pawn. And in the time trouble, this would have just been the cleanest way, I think. But actually, this was also kind of a nice little shimmy where I just play knight c8, knight b6, and if the white bishop controls c8, then I use a8. But okay, we're both down to 7 seconds, no increment, and in the end, we're both just blitzing moves like instantly, and it ended up being that I actually got this position. I had no idea I had more time on the clock, and I unfortunately just blundered a threefold repetition when he had 0.3 seconds, so I lost. So I drew. But the point is not to the actual result. I mean, these are just fun blitz games, but the point is that actually I think we learned some really instructive points about this endgame. So firstly, when we're playing with the knights in such a position, to coordinate the knights in a way that restricts the opponent's rooks when they doubled, and then use our major pieces to play against isolated pawn, this is a really nice thing, because I think these kind of structures will come up again and again. Like, this is not going to be the first, well, this is not going to be the last time that I play these structures. This is what I'm trying to say. So, having said that, I thought we'll actually delve in a little bit to the theory, and maybe we'll do some d4 if we've got the time, but for sure we're going to start with e4. And we're just going to try and understand this endgame line a bit deeper before taking a look at the theory. So if you guys are really interested in the Antoshin theory, like, please stick around to 11:30 for these lines on the critical positions after the starting position of the Antoshin, which is here. Like, from this moment on move 6, white has a few different ideas, and I think they're really, really nuanced and really interesting, and we're going to get into that in a bit. But first, we're going to start with the endgame, because I think this is kind of where I feel like it would be really cool to have this within my repertoire, because it feels like no matter how much an opponent preps, if I understand the ending super, super well, it's basically prep immune. And I think, especially with my repertoire with, like, I don't know, Benoni or like Gurgenitz Modern, if someone really sweats it, they can actually prep something quite nasty. And it's not always desirable for my opponent to have such an advantage, right? Like, Lucas, who's watching the streams, we've got a match on, like, March the... March the 16th, or I don't know, some random date in March. And yeah, like Lucas is probably going to prepare for this match for 3 months. He knows all of my lines. So, you know, maybe I'll surprise him with a Philidor endgame. And yeah, he can prep it to move 100, and I'm going to feel confident that I can outplay him and beat him. So, this is why we're going to try and understand this a bit better, because yeah, if we have this d6 e5 against d4, against e4, against c4, then we are confident that if they ever enter such a line, we are able to outplay the opponent. So, at this moment here, I think it would be worth to check out the databases, and of course on Lichess, I'd want to stick to 2500 and above, which is, you always, like for a database, you want to look for players who are stronger than you, right? So I would recommend including ratings that are at least 200 points and above. Stronger, okay, for me, like I can't just choose. I mean, 2500 and above is honestly good enough. Like, there's going to be enough instructive points. And okay, we'll use Masters database as well. So as we can see here, from the get-go, we see that there is definitely a popularity in this bishop c4 move. And this was also backed up by the engine on depth 39 that this is a 0.8 advantage. So we got bishop c4 as the main line. We should also consider how knight f3 is different, how knight c3 is different, how f4 is different, how bishop e3 is different. Not necessarily from a theoretical point of view, but I think it's just important to understand. Yeah, and it's kind of reflected in Lichess as well. All of these moves are being played. And can I just say, look at these percentages for black. Right? These are some huge percentages for black, which shows that the players who are choosing this line as black are clearly players who feel like they can excel in this way. I prepped 15 moves already. Fantastic. I look forward to the game, Lucas. Not sure what is best. I'd probably put on light to blunt bishop as your knights play on both colors. Put on light to blunt bishop? I'm not sure which position you're talking about, Daniel. Hello, Arjun. Welcome to the stream. Against 2 knight f3, you can go for King's Indian and argue that you've avoided any f3 systems. Yo, Shay, that is huge. That is actually, I really like that logic. Yeah, we should definitely mention this in this. So we'll have this as the main line, and knight f3 definitely needs to be checked. And yeah, you could argue that you can get King's Indian without this crucial f3 line, but at the same time, okay, f3, this what is it even called? I can't remember. I should know the name of it. Begins with an S. I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, I know that the mainline King's Indians are also very critical, so you'd have to be pretty brave to allow yourself to enter this. Yeah, but maybe it's the way. Maybe this is a good opportunity to learn some King's Indian as well, right? Like, this would reduce my theory, and maybe it's something that needs to be done. Like, I've never properly studied the King's Indian. Anyway, we're getting distracted. So let's go back to this. So both in Lichess and Masters, it's reflected that this bishop c4 is main move. So I think the best way to go about it is to look at bishop c4, and then afterwards we can try and understand what are these other moves lacking that bishop c4 has. So the first thing to notice is that bishop c4 is attacking f7. And this means, yeah, this is already a bit uncomfortable. I can see that, I know that there'll be multiple tries here, bishop e6, king e8, as well as this f6. And bishop e6 is a move I would love to play if this wasn't so bad objectively. Like, if this was like plus 0.5, this could be an awesome type of position to understand, because with such a unique pawn structure, if you knew exactly how to meet white's tries and how to place your pieces, I could fancy it. No matter how weak it looks. Like, if I feel like I can place my pieces well enough, maybe it's not so bad. But I think given the objective strength of f6 and how it also just makes a lot of sense actually just to solidify this pawn chain, I think we should start here. If we don't like the lines, maybe we can consider this king e8 or bishop e6, and if we can make that work, even better. And at this moment, we see that engine is actually suggesting this f4 move on depth 38, and we can see that the masters haven't caught on, right? So this must be some new kind of Stockfish 16 that's suggesting that f4 is like slightly better. And basically, bishop e3 seems to be the most popular move. We'll make that our main line. But of course, we must consider f4. And we must also consider this knight c3, which seems to be quite popular as well. Okay, let's keep going with the main line for now. So f4 looks very, very critical, but this is kind of more natural. So let's just understand what is kind of the goal with black. So we've put our pawns on dark squares. White has a slight lead in development. This bishop actually looks quite strong, controlling these squares, and maybe we'd want to neutralize it, although we have pawns on dark squares, maybe we don't want to trade light squared bishops, right? Probably we want to be trading the dark squared bishops. So actually, in that sense, it makes a lot of sense why knight d7 is actually the top move from Engine, because we are wanting to play bishop c5. Now, I suspect c6 is the most popular move because it's kind of in the same line of thinking as my over-the-board game. Not over-the-board game, online game, where I basically just wanted to put my king to safety as soon as possible. But if we can actually get away with trading off this dark squared bishop, this might make a lot of sense. So, yeah, let's see what people are saying. Same-ish, right, that's the other line. Exactly. Yeah, Kid has like more than 10 main lines. Exactly. Yeah, it's a real beast to tackle. So we'll have to consider that carefully. Like I would have to say, like, yeah, if there's no way that we can make d6 work against this without entering a Kid, then that makes me less likely that I would want to play d6 against d4. I mean, that's also fine, right? We can just play d6 against e4 and make a repertoire against e4. But it would have been nice. But this knight f3 is... I know that knight f3 also stops a lot of lines. Like, for instance, like this kind of Budapest gambit, right? This is only possible against c4. But then knight f3 stops that completely, right? So this knight f3 line is always stopping a lot of like interesting lines. But I wonder if there is something. Like c6 feels very dodgy, like some check perk. What if knight f6 here? Like not entering a King's Indian, but just trying to... I guess after c4... Sorry, again, I'm getting distracted. Yeah, knight d7 is interesting, you know? This is really interesting. I wonder if we can play for e5 in this way. Anyway, we'll come to this at a later point. Let's keep going with this. So let's try and look into this knight d7 and try and understand, like, are we able to basically play this fast enough? Now, for some reason, knight d2 is by far the most popular move on Lichess, and knight c3, knight d2 played here. Wow. Okay. So it clearly shows that white is intending to castle queenside, which I tend to know is like the general best idea you can do. I know that a line that used to annoy me a lot actually in the past, I think when I was playing the Scotch as white, was this one here, where basically we had position... no, not like this. The point is that I'd sometimes play some people who play this, and I was thinking, like, this can't be good. This literally cannot be good. Like, they can't even play c6 here. Like, this just looks like a terrible placement of the knight. And I was just like messing this up like time and time again. And I realized the best way to play this is to play bishop e3, prevent bishop c5, develop the knight to c3, and castle queenside with tempo. And this was working really, really nice. So I actually found that this was the best way to go. Not to play with bishop c4. And interesting to see that all of the Lichess players are not playing like the way I worked out. But anyway, that was something I kind of understood. So it makes sense that white wants to like kind of castle queenside with this initiative on the king. But after knight d7, interesting again that white is really, really wanting to play this f4, at least Stockfish is. But we can see that knight c3 and knight d2 are the main moves, and then probably we should consider f4 in a bit as well. I guess we'll consider f4 after we look at f4 and move before. But let's say they play knight c3, because this makes the most sense, right? To try and keep the file open. And this is where I would love to play bishop f5. Bishop c5, but I assume this doesn't work because castle's queenside, and we are not in time to get our king safe enough. I mean, king e7 I would have thought would be fine, but no, it's not because of this move. So c6 we can see is really useful, right? Like, if white played a slow move, then suddenly black is better, right? So what we can understand is that this endgame, like, statically speaking, black is actually doing very well in a lot of lines, but because white has the extra tempo, white is going to be able to try and use their initiative to try and achieve some kind of gain before black has reached an ideal setup like this. So black is literally just one move away from already getting something very nice. So after knight c3, okay, we can't play this bishop c5, which will add a dubious, but we'll keep this. No, not knight c3 is dubious. Bishop c5 is dubious, so we'll keep this for now. Just to show this as a point. And interesting to see here that the computer and Lichess and Masters, I'm sure, everyone, their cat's mother, is saying c6. Right, which makes perfect sense based on what we just looked at with bishop c5. So in this position, white is castling queenside, which is very natural, and you can see that white has already given up pretty much their advantage. Black is already equalizing here. And again, we have some different moves given by Stockfish. Again, this is just depth 24. This isn't perhaps great enough to understand. Everyone on Lichess above 2500 is playing king c7, and Masters has also been backed up by this idea to play king c7 too. It is the same evaluation as the other moves, and it feels the most principled, right? The rook is on this line, so it makes sense that we'd want to play king c7. Now, at this moment here, it looks like it's still some theory to play with f4. Maybe some book has recommended this. And a4 is a move as well, and knight g2. I guess we can look at all of these moves. And maybe for the time being, as I said, I have to travel tomorrow, so I'm literally going to need to pack at some point. So this can't be like a 3-hour stream, although I'd love it to be. Maybe it's worth now trying to understand this f4 move. So what is f4 trying to achieve? I think the point is that, well, black is trying to, get safe on the c7 square. And as you should in chess, you should try and weaken the king. So what white is hoping to do is achieve like some pressure on this diagonal. And we basically want to prevent this. So that is why, to me, seeing Lichess database saying bishop d6 makes the most sense, right? Like, if we can play bishop d6, and if they were to take, and we take back with a knight or bishop, this would stronghold the center, stronghold this diagonal, and isolate this pawn. This looks fantastic. Having said that, Engine is recommending the move knight h6. I do not like b5. I really don't like pushing pawns where my king is. I mean, maybe we can look into this if necessary. Let's have bishop d6 as a line, but also let's have a look at this knight h6 too. So bishop d6, the reason why it's not so popular is because of f5. Wow, so white is trying to gain some space. Eventually, they're probably going to want to play for g5. And I guess this is like a favorable pawn structure to try and make progress on this side of the board. And the other thing to note as well is this bishop is doing a fantastic job of controlling this king side, and also our bishop is struggling. So unless we were able to find a way to like trade this light squared bishop off, I would feel quite worried about this kind of pressure. So because of this, I'll just put like with g4 h4 great king side prospects with bishop c4. I wonder if this knight h6 is a way of actually preventing the strength of this f5. So, okay, concretely speaking, f5 is actually a problem here because there is pressure on f2 and e3, and that is why this is not possible. If we can gain the bishop pair in such a position, I think we could definitely get some kind of advantage on the dark squares eventually. So, concretely speaking, there's no f5 immediately, so h3 makes complete sense as the top move to stop knight g4 and try and prepare this. And wow, Engine is back to wanting this b5 move. If b5 is the main move here, this is going to be tough because I really don't understand it. But let's explore it. Let's try and understand. So bishop b3 makes sense. And we're trying to play for knight c5. Oh, what a nice idea. What a nice idea, right? Because we're controlling all of these squares. And we're basically saying to white, we're going to take your bishop. You're going to have less control of the king side. Therefore, these f5 plans are going to be less impressive. And let's say white plays a move like f5 here, right? Black is completely better, and not by taking b3 immediately. Wow, a5 just to provoke. Interesting. So a5, we can already weaken this side even more before taking the bishop. Like if they play some move like a3. Wow, we're not even taking the bishop now. We're even playing g6. How is g6 so good? Okay, I'm gonna keep this here because that's like the most logical to move to me. And g4, b4. How is this working out? I guess this would be really bad because now do we take... Ah, we take on e4. Right. Okay, this is quite interesting how this e4 gets hit. Okay, wow. Wow, okay, so that was a bit of a rabbit hole that we went down. But I think we understood some interesting things about this setup, which is basically that we should be careful of f4, f5 as a motif and trying to play on this side. But white should also be very careful of just like having this bishop get trapped due to this motif. And that makes me wonder, actually, in this position after king c7, is there any reason to play a3? And have a look at that. Would you see the engine's top moves? a4 to prevent this b5 idea, and a3 to give a home for the bishop. And look at this. The bishop is coming back to a2 safe and sound. So we're already understanding like the nuances of this endgame much better. Now, any white player who gets this position, zero chance that they understand why a3 is good. Zero chance. Not a single player under 2700 online understands this. Not a single player, I guarantee. And now we and you know about this, right? So if you understand this nuance as black and you understand it to this level, I reckon you are going to be able to outplay your opponent. So okay, we are definitely very deep down this rabbit hole. Is there any way we can combat this a3 idea to prevent our knight c5 idea to try and win the bishop and then get this favorable endgame where we're not so worried about this f4, f5? I realized that we're not reading chat for a while. I wish we could have lessons on Giuoco piano. Something fun? You've got to be kidding me, Tricky. You've got to be kidding me. Giuoco piano is everything I resent about chess. It's like the most static position where the ideas are so nuanced and so difficult to get right. You can't even... Like, okay, if you're 2800, then fine. But the thing is, like, I've even seen Karyakin, like, I don't know, 20 moves in, be completely lost playing the most logical moves. And if the position was slightly different, then he's completely winning. And it's just ridiculous, like, how tricky it is to understand. And it's just like, I wouldn't bother, to be honest. I would try, like, and play openings that are sound where you can kind of, like, understand and learn and get a practical advantage, right? So this is my philosophy to play. Are you able to play on Lichess after the stream? I'm probably not gonna have time. I think Yevgeny, you missed at the start, and Melora, hello. I think you guys missed as well. I am traveling tomorrow. I'm traveling to the Netherlands. My flight is in the afternoon. I am taking a train in the morning. I haven't even packed yet, so I'm going to pack very soon, and then I'm going to stream at 11:30, and when that finishes, that will count as tomorrow's stream, and yeah, I will go to bed because I need to sleep. But yeah, well, I think you have to play b5 or no other moves almost. e5 and just YOLO it. Far simpler. Not far simpler, but okay, you can YOLO it as much as you want. I start making faces at people that play Giuoco piano. Exactly, Evgeny. I'm glad. As you should. Okay, this is gonna be fine. So, yeah, we understand now why there's like this importance to play a3. But incredibly, this is almost interesting as well, right? Because now you actually create a hook on the king side for potential ideas of b4 and activating this rook immediately. So this is super interesting as well. Like, okay, let's delete this for now and say, okay, let's neaten this up and make some comments, right? So that we understand and remember. So, the most natural move, and then h3 is of course the correct move. This is just a mistake. This is premature, and this is just better for black. So that's why h3, and then b5, knight c5, if we can win the light squared bishop, plans of f5 hold far less strength. And then this final position, oh yeah, this just went crazy. This just went completely crazy. We could probably leave it at knight takes. I don't know. I don't know if we want to go into these nuances of the e4 pawn. Maybe e4 pawn can be weak when knight c5 has been played also. Okay, so maybe this is already enough to be at slight advantage. This is going to be even more advantage. But yeah, that's very interesting. So to see this a3, suddenly white solves the issue of their bishop LSB being traded, but has other issues to worry about after. And then we've got this idea, right, of b5, a5, and we're hoping to play for this b4. And yeah, they just can't take, right? If they take, then it's already going to be really problematic. And if they can't take, okay, knight b1 makes sense, so that you can try and recapture here. And wow, interesting that knight bishop d6 is now the best move. So what's up with this? Probably knight h6 makes the most sense, in the sense that they still can't go f5 due to this, right? This is like a really nice trick that we should always keep in mind. But if h3, now bishop d6, and why is bishop d6 suddenly working? If f5, what's the difference now? We played knight c5 anyway, hitting this pawn. Wow, and already white has just too much to deal with, right? How amazing is this that, you know, in the most critical main line, black is actually the one putting on pressure, right? Black is the one with serious counterplay. So it looks as if white will dominate the kingside once more, but in fact black has great counterplay on a3 and e4 with knight c5. So we can see that this is a problem. Now just to finish this line off, I think it's also worth considering this a4 move, which has been tried as well. So maybe some players are understanding actually this b5 is really the critical test of this whole setup from white, based on the lines that we just examined. And in this position, what are the options? So let's see what like Lichess and Masters have played. So it'll be funny if this is already novelty. Yeah, exactly, right? So literally even chess masters, they don't have time to study the Antoshin Philidor. Like literally nowadays, this kind of like Philidor type defense with, oh no, not with this, because they blundered a pawn, they have to play knight c3. This kind of stuff. Look how popular knight d7 is nowadays. Literally only 700 people playing this old-fashioned 19th century Antoshin Philidor. Nobody's gonna have time to actually analyze this. And also the philosophy from top players, I'll be real, the philosophy from top players like I am and above, they don't bother with sidelines because they trust their chess instinct enough that they will be able to outplay any opponent playing a dodgy sideline. They'll understand chess enough and they will focus their time on main lines. This is how all the top players play. So we can get a practical advantage if we enter such lines. And so far, we are really understanding this well, right? Like knight d7 with the idea of bishop c5 / knight c5. And then here, we are not in time to play such moves, such positionally correct moves, since our king is currently too weak. this is why c6 is so important. So yeah, basically bishop takes c5, knight takes c5, castles queenside, and this is basically better for white. So had black had an extra tempo, black would be better. So this is actually better for black. Yeah, I'm just annotating this actually so that if any of you guys want to join the study, feel free to drop your Lichess username in chat or in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube. And then I'll add you to the study, and hopefully you can enjoy these lines as well. The flight is not to Malaysia, no. The flight is to Netherlands. I'm just visiting a friend for the weekend, and my goal is to try and write as much of the Chessable course on my travels, in the train, on the bus, on the plane, everywhere I can. Just write. We continue. So c6 was played, king c7 is the idea. And then now we had this main line with f4, which we actually realize is probably not critical. Even though in this position, the main critical test, probably a4, has never been tried. Probably the most critical test, since this stops our b5 idea. And yeah, now it's the time that we're probably going to need to enter into novel territory. And we can see that some white players have been playing this with a lot of success, right? So clearly it's a line that's working out. And yeah, I'd be curious to take recommendations from chat. What do you guys think? Against this a4 move, how are we going to deal with this? So my first thought is actually I would want to play a5 and basically just like secure this b4 square for any of my pieces, and also just prevent white from ever playing a5, which may be annoying because we never can play a6 with weakening b6. I guess maybe there's a chance we could push b6 ourselves. That could be interesting if a5. Let's just play a random move. What's a random move here? I'm just worried about this, if this is any good. But let's say they play a5. Okay, this is actually really strong. Okay, knight h6 is too strong of a move. Let's play some crappy move like bishop e7. I just want to see, is b6 an idea? So b6 is interesting. It's not bad. It's not great. But yeah, a5 would be one of my moves, and it's definitely up there. Knight h6 is cool because it always provokes this h3, and if they're not paying attention, this is just already so strong. I think this is just such a cheeky move to throw in. Having said that, though, we don't really have a future to get this knight on f7 just because this bishop is just so annoying. The engine is on. Yeah, I know the engine's on, but the point is we're trying to develop this theory, right? Don't save this video so no one can prep you. I mean, the thing is, if, you know, I'm playing a player who is dedicated enough to watch all of these streams, honestly, at this point, I'll take the watch hours to try and get monetized on YouTube. And honestly, like, I don't think like this is so bad. If someone is bothered to watch all of this, then I don't know. I think it's cool. I think it's cool. Like, I'll play them in different ways. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. I'm not too bothered. I'm honestly not too bothered. So let's try and understand this. So b6, it feels like it's playable, but it doesn't feel ideal, right? It feels like this plan with f4, f5, like this feels like it's just going to be some uncomfortable pressure. So I'm curious to delve into this a5 move for starters. Oh, then I have no clue. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're just trying to understand like what makes sense in this position. So another move that made sense to me is this bishop c5, but I kind of realized that probably it doesn't work due to rook takes d7, and then just tactically speaking, it's not working. So I think that's the issue with this bishop c5, but maybe a5 is interesting. And again, we have to see this critical f4. This is the ultimate test. And here, Engine is liking bishop d6. And the question is now, is f5 going to be an issue? And in this position, Engine really likes this b6. And what is the reason? Oh, look at this. Look at this, guys. b6, g4, bishop c5. So the point is not anything else, but we just want to be able to play bishop c5 safely. Oh, wow. So here, the idea of b6 is to play bishop c5 and avoid this tactic, right? Because here, sure, they double our pawns, but there'd be a whole exchange down. So this is the idea. b6 in order to play bishop c5. Are we playing bishop c5 immediately? We are not. Because if we play it immediately, then we're getting pressure on this e5, and we always want to recapture with the piece. So that is why we play a5. We want to give white more tempi so that they can show their hand. Oh, this is so interesting. Does this all make sense to you guys, or is it just making sense to me? Like, I think this makes a lot of sense. So b6, this has the right idea, but perhaps premature. This is also why I'm saying, guys, that this is like a repertoire not for the faint-hearted. This is for people who really want to understand nuances in openings and therefore get an advantage this way, right? So this is the right idea, but perhaps premature. b6 has the goal of playing bishop c5, but we need to clarify the situation after f4 first. So here, this is slightly premature. Since white hasn't pushed f5 yet, now white can get an advantage in the center, right? So now, basically, bishop takes c5, and basically here, this is going to be slightly better for white. We always want to recapture e5 with a piece, not a pawn. So basically here, a5 is kind of interesting. A useful improving move that gives white the move. We want white to clarify the situation in the center sooner rather than later. And then after f4, now we can play this move bishop d6, provoking white to close the center with f5. And everyone's going to do this if they're even getting to this stage, because this is kind of like the main point. White wants to play on this side of the board. And now we have bishop... No, not yet. We must play b6 first. And I will include this as a blunder, right? Because... no, not f5. We need to include this as a blunder. Because... of course, this bishop c5 idea never works when we haven't yet played b6. Okay, so in this position, rook takes d7 is just completely and utterly winning. So we have to play b6 first. Now we are ready to play bishop c5 next. And in this position, knight f3 is the most logical move. Or maybe even actually, no, g4 makes even more sense, I think. Just getting on with like trying to push from the side. And now, bishop c5. And this is the point that we are basically able to strategically trade off this dark squared bishop. And now, this is just a decent game. I'm going to give this as a decent game because while white still has some initiative on the king side, we have traded off our bad bishop. And I think this would be interesting. Like, it looks like g5 is like some critical play immediately. Let's say they develop knight f3 first, which feels more natural. Wow, we're even going in with bishop a6 to trade even more and play out this position. H6 is apparently a useful move as well. Yeah, I mean, basically we can keep going, right? Like this just keeps getting richer and richer, and we can understand more about this setup. I would imagine H4 would be useful. And I'm curious why this is actually only a draw. I'm surprised this structure is holding up. So this kind of situation where we take and play knight here. Like, to me, I would think that this structure is somehow better for white. But maybe the point is that this e4 pawn is also weak eventually, right? And maybe this is the point. And why is this kind of move so bad? Like, trying to control this h7 square. Rook a d8. And I guess next we'd want to take here and just dominate the a file, right? But if this... Ah, we can take here, right, and keep this file. And this would be... I like how rook h8 is even just better, right? Just to say that this is slightly better. How interesting is that? How interesting is that? So you can never get problems on h7. You somehow secure the position and you've just got a slight edge because you just keep the h file. Your king is perfectly placed to cover the rook on the d file. And you just regroup your knights and try and target these weaknesses. And actually we're just completely solid. We're just completely, utterly solid. There's no way to get to the e6 square. There's no entry points. What a position. I just make up all my prep. Yeah, I mean, like, this is like really overkill, right? But this is what I'm saying. This is why I quoted this Jan Markos stuff at the start. Because, of course, this is not the most practical way to go about chess, right? Like, you know, I probably hung like a queen on move 6 or something, so there's no point. But ultimately, this is the stuff I really enjoy. I like getting to the bottom and understanding the nuances of such positions. And I think, actually, this has a lot of potential, this Philidor. Because, I mean, you know, if I practice this endgame over and over, I feel I could take on anyone. Like, doesn't matter. Carlsen, Caruana, Nakamura, like, you know, if I feel like I understand where all the pieces go, I understand all of the tries in the position, what else is there to understand? Like, this is just good. How are you, Michael? Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Like, I feel like this kind of stuff is really interesting. And it's just like, yeah, if I could get this is great. And then actually, when I show you guys the critical theory of like the main lines in this Philidor, I feel like it's fantastic as well. So I think this opening just has a lot of potential. It's just d6, e5. I think loads of players are going to trade into this endgame. I feel like I'm going to be able to outplay a lot of players. But again, I'm going to need to remember all the subtleties. This is going to take some practice. Yeah. But yeah, really interesting to understand. So, okay, you know what, guys? I could probably go on and like cover more of these different nuances. I mean, maybe just briefly we can cover this other main move, right? This f4 immediately. Like, how does this affect the position? So in our previous position, we already had a lot of pieces developed, and we were able to play this b5, knight c5 idea. Get rid of this bishop, and have a decent position. And interesting about this f4, like, you know, we don't have all of this immediately. Now, what I understand is that we really need to be able to take back with a piece. So I'm kind of surprised. I was saying I was kind of surprised that 97 isn't a top engine move, but I just misread it. I missed that 97 is. So 97 makes the most sense along with our preparation. I think this is like based on what we understand about the main line, this is what we should be playing. And here knight f3 is the main move. And again, we always want to recapture with a piece, so that makes our job really easy. Bishop d6, right? This makes complete sense. And now we see that this f5 is played. We also have f takes e5, which is played the most, surprisingly, which makes absolutely no sense to me. Like, why would you just give yourself this isolated pawn, given the endgame prospects? And g3, maybe we should cover it, but it doesn't seem so critical because probably the critical lines are when they actually play with g4, right? So I think this doesn't need to be covered. And now we understand that in this position, we would love to play c6, to play b5, to play knight c5, and get rid of his bishop and put pressure on e4. So why, then, is c6 not the main move here? So c6 is not the main move because white can already play a4. But we've covered this, right? We've understood that in this position, what did we understand? We understood that this is where we want to play a5, we want to put the king on c7, and we want to trade off this bishop. Now, okay, there is no bishop on e3 right now, but why should this be such a problem? Let's just play a5. And okay, they are arguing that they don't need to spend a tempo with bishop e3, that bishop can do everything that's good on c1, and they can just go ahead and play g4 already. And let's say we play with king c7. Of course, we don't need to play b6 when there's no tactics involving rook takes d7. And in this position, white is trying to play with the king on e2. Wow. Although now bishop e3, that makes no sense to me. Oh, and I'm playing with king e3. How interesting. How interesting. So perhaps already we understand that this is perhaps a more critical way to go. Because white is just accelerated, right? White hasn't spent all these tempi, casting the queenside, which ultimately led to nothing. And in fact allowed us to consolidate our position better, right? So maybe this is like a better way to play. It's so interesting. So in this position, bishop d6, it feels kind of forced. f5. And now I wonder, is there a better way for us to play in this position? Now, one move I'm seeing that's very interesting is knight b6, because this is before white has had a chance to play a4. They do have the square bishop b3, and then bishop c5. Feels a bit artificial putting this pawn on b6. Again, I think c6 is really interesting, because if they don't know this subtlety, right? If they don't know that this is coming, then I think we're going to do very well here. I think a lot of players are just going to play... They're not going to play a4. Like, I bet my bottom dollar that most players are not going to play this a4 move. Funny that a4 is black is winning every time. Maybe white is using Stockfish and they're getting banned. Maybe that's why. But interesting to see, most players are playing bishop e3 here. And I would be very surprised if b5 knight c5 is not the idea. Yeah, and we're seeing that actually in this position, bishop d3 is favored. And bishop here, can we just go knight c5 like before? Oh, interesting that they developed this way with the knight to try and improve the knight because it's not on c3 yet. See, these nuances are so interesting. So interesting. And also here we can already just go bishop c5 and trade because there's no castles with d7 threats. So now we can actually get away with trading bishops now that the center has been clarified. So I like this move a lot, actually. So I think whenever the center is closed, we can white has not castled and developed any chances for initiative, we can then make this positionally strong trade of the dark squared bishops. So this is something to get clear. A4 is probably the best move. And I'm curious why knight e7 is even suggested by Engine, because to me it makes no sense. G4, yeah, G4 and the knight feels just a bit awkward on e7. A5 I feel like makes sense given that this is what we were playing against a4 before. And I do understand how this is different. I do understand how white gets some kind of accelerated play on the king side. But maybe it's also not the end of the world. How did we play this position before? Did we always have the knight on h6? I'm very curious just to check this. So I can't remember. Like when we discussed this a4 move, and we had this a5, bishop d6, solidify the center, then play b6. We want to play with bishop c5, and we see that the knight has never strayed from g8. Right? That's really interesting. In this line, we did stray, but that was because we were playing a very different setup. This was a very different setup. So, yeah, as we can see that in this immediate f4, play a4, play a5, and this was actually played every time. Yo, Philidor 23, 2500 player, what a legend. A5, and here on g4, we're not playing with knight h6, which makes no sense. And instead, I would imagine we should play with bishop c5, king c7, and this h6 move. And I wonder if we can play h6 already, and let's say they play with h4. And the difference here is that g5 is going to be very annoying because our rooks have not connected, right? If you remember this position in the critical line of this main line, basically by the time that white has got like some initiative, we are in time to play knight e7, and that is why we are getting a great position here, because yeah, our rooks were able to defend. But this is a very interesting case where white is aiming to get an accelerated kingside initiative and break on g5 before black has fully developed and linked up their rooks on the back rank. So yeah, in this position, maybe h6 is kind of wrong, right? Because h4 is going to come, king c7 can be played. And why is g5 not a success already? Oh, because we have the exact same situation, right? White also doesn't have their back rank linked up. So let's promote this for a second and let's make this comment. Interestingly, the same issue that black experiences with an undeveloped back rank can be identically applied to white as well. White also hasn't connected their rooks, thus this attack on the king side is premature. Right, so in this position we can go h takes, and of course this is a massive blunder because this. So we can understand that actually maybe it's not such a big deal if white tries to get this initiative sooner. We basically set up this position where we're going to develop these pieces very, very quickly. We're going to play b6, bishop a6, link up the rooks. So, yeah, and I'll put here, yeah, if white doesn't execute their kingside attack immediately, then black should set up as in the main line with wait, we should call this the 6 bishop e3 main line with what move was the a4 move with 9 a4. Then black should set up the same as in this main line, right? And basically here, so to reiterate, that would mean king c7, b6, bishop a6, knight e7, thus connecting the rooks on the back rank and completing development. So as we can see, guys, basically this this is kind of like the basic understanding of this Antoshin ending. And you can see, like, you know, this hasn't this hasn't required too much like difficulty, right? It just takes like a bit of effort to understand what the engine is trying to get at, and based on, you know, a decent understanding of chess, we can actually get to the bottom of what dynamics are present in the position. And we are very close to actually understanding this whole opening. Like, what else is there to learn? Like, this f4 in this position, again, we don't need to remember it, such as like, oh, on this move we play this, on this move we play this. No, we just understand. Now we understand this f4. We understand that we can never take when we can take back with a piece. We understand when they close the center, what are the dynamics. And that means it makes it very easy to play. So in this position, okay, we don't need to play bishop d6, right? Because we don't need to clarify the center immediately. We already have enough safety on e5. And what can we play? Well, in this position, what is the priority? Probably we want to be playing c6, right? We are not playing bishop c5 because bishop takes, knight takes, and they take the pawn, and we're in trouble. So, of course, we try and improve our king safety first, and very likely this is going to transpose to something we know, right? Knight f3, bishop d6, and this just simply transposes to 6 f4. With great understanding, we do not need to memorize move by move theory. So yeah, this is completely understood. And knight d2, this was this interesting idea actually, because there were some lines. What were the lines where basically the knight was able to come out this way? Was it in the lines where we were maybe considering trading? No, that was in something else. I remember we had some option where the knight came to d2. But interestingly here, black is actually able to get away with this immediately. Wow, so this is perfect, right? So since there is no pressure in the center on e5, nor is white fast enough with castles to impact our king safety, we can actually go ahead and make this positionally correct trade of our DSB. And this is great. If we can get this, we can see, are we in time to play c6? And we understand it, right? See, we are in time to play c6 since... oh, okay, we do have to be a bit careful, though. Oh, we do have to be a bit careful. Rats, it's not so nice. This knight b3 is super annoying. If only we had like one more move to be able to play king c7, then this would be fantastic. But this is actually a bit more nuanced, right? Because we can't play this because of takes. And then the problem is they got knight here as well. And again, we can't play this, I'm assuming, because of knight e6 check, which is very annoying. So then we'd have to play knight e7, king e7, and then this is not so pleasant. I'm not vibing with this as much. So unfortunately, c6 isn't quite working. So in that case, then probably we cannot play this bishop c5. I think this is still too direct and still too strong. So I think I'm gonna save this explanation. We're gonna keep this. We're gonna give this a dubious, even though it's equal. I'm just gonna give this as dubious because this is very strong, and we are almost in time to what's the right word? Consolidate with king c7, but just not quite fast enough because of this knight b3 check. We have to block, and knight c5, and this is met by knight e6, and this is better for white. So what we can say, though, is in this position, what other moves have been tried? Knight d2, knight c3. If white plays something very slow, like f3, I can imagine a lot of players just wanting to copy, thinking that this is fine. This is far too slow, and okay, and this is far too slow, and since there is no pressure, yada yada yada, then we can play this bishop c5. And now this is going to be completely fine because on any knight c3, we can play c6. And now on castles queenside, king c7, and black is in time to consolidate, thus has better prospects having traded off the correct bishop. So that is basically. I'll also add this to the study as well. This was like my first endgame attempt, and we can understand like the situations of the isolated pawn. Understanding the endgame 1. And we can add these clarifications here. So let's just quickly annotate this in case we want. So this is actually better. The knight is better placed on f7, where it covers d6 slash d8. Thus, the whole d file is secured. And this is very good. And yeah, and then now this is where this is where we have the discussion of the rooks. So very important against an IQP. In general, we want to trade pieces. However, if we have the chance to attack the IQP with major pieces, it is better to keep the major pieces on the board and trade minor pieces instead. And as we can see in such a position, like if they just play something like this, we can see the difference. As we can see, white's rooks are useless on the open file due to our king on c7 and our well-placed knights. In contrast, our rooks are doubled against white's greatest weakness. If we imagine the minor pieces to be traded, then black could think about winning e4, say if rook e1 slash plus rook d1, rook e2, sorry, is played with the timely f5 break. And I'll put Jan Markos levers under the surface. Yeah, so this is just incredible, right? And then the rest of it, what was this b6 move? Probably not. Oh yeah, this is important as well. Much safer, just to keep all pawns on dark squares. And then this was the position. Now we can see the problem of a6. Our pawn got fixed on a light square, and we got a worse position as a result. So honestly, guys, if this isn't good inspiration to analyze your games, understand your games, I don't know what is, because we learned so much from just analyzing this one game. And the great thing is about if you play openings that are within your capacity to fully understand, you're going to make huge progress. Now, maybe for a 2800, they can fully understand the Gioco Piano or the Roy Lopez or the Najdorf, but as a mere mortal, unless you're willing to put in the hours that a 2800 explains these ideas, and also bearing in mind that this 2800 may not explain the ideas in a way that you will be able to comprehend, I think it's a much better idea to try and tackle openings that you think you can fully grasp, openings that you think you will get enough and be able to practice, like we're going to get this endgame over and over and over, and directly apply the things that we're understanding and learning from our game analysis. And that is how we're going to make huge progress in chess. So on that note, guys, yes, today I do feel very inspired. Hi, are you down to play a blitz game? Not at all, not at all. Today we are understanding this Antoshin Philidor. And this is not a Chessable class sneak peek. The Chessable course, I promise you, will be something that I think anyone of any level can play, understand, and get great positions. And I think it's really strong, even up to my level and beyond. Honestly, like even I think title players could make use of it. So I'm very excited to showcase that. This Antoshin Philidor, I feel like you need to be above a certain level to appreciate. Like the nuances we discussed today, but definitely somewhat advanced. But I think, I don't know, I think it has a lot of potential. So I think this understanding of the endgame was really, really interesting. I'm probably going to do some work on these remaining sidelines, but probably it's just going to be very easy to understand. I think we understand this endgame really well. We understand where white plays, we understand how we get counterplay, we understand which pieces we want to trade. That's all you need to know, and then you can play this, right? So this is the Antoshan Philidor. This is the Philidor endgame line with e5. I think we've somewhat understood / solved it. Definitely most strong players are not going to know what we've just discussed, and that's where we're going to get our advantage. So on that note, guys, I have around an hour to pack for my flight tomorrow, and then I'm going to do another stream, which will count as tomorrow's streams, which will be part 2 of this Antoshan Philidor repertoire. So thank you guys all for watching. Thank you for all the support from the 2 YouTube members who have joined, Josh and Jet. Thank you so much for the support, and thank you to all the Patreon subscribers as well. Like, honestly, you guys make this journey so much better, and give me a lot of motivation to keep making these videos. So I hope you guys found that interesting, and I guess see you another time. See you in an hour, I guess. Yes, I'm traveling tomorrow, exactly. So I will see you guys in an hour, and yeah, hope you guys found that interesting.